All right, we're live here in St. Louis. John Ruhlin just brought us coffee. Amazing. Listen, I love what you're doing out there. I love getting to know you. We met at 100 Million Mastermind. And I'm like, man, I read your book. And we just started shooting the shit.
For like 4 hours.
We ended up talking quite a bit. And it seems like there's a lot more than just Giftology because you're a connector. If you had to pick one word to describe John Ruhlin, what would it be? I mean, great dad, it would be daddy maybe, but outside of family.
Outside of family and being a husband, father. I mean, connectors, I think a part of it, but I think at a core level, like a great life is great relationships. And so I would say, if I'd probably put uncommon relationships. I think that the quality of somebody's life tends to be like loved ones, yes, but like who are they, employees, clients, friends, mentors, advisors, like it comes down to people, it comes down to relationships. So whether you're in garage stores or private equity or gifts or masterminds, like what's the common denominator amongst anybody that's doing great things? They're not doing it by themselves. Yeah, technology is cool, but even like a Google, how many employees do they have? How many people do they have? 80,000. Now they just let go 6% of their force, 12,000 people. But
man, frame. So one of the things. So tell me a little bit. So I read Giftology, and I love this story. You filled up a guy's whole hotel room with what store was it?
Yeah, he was staying at the Ritz, ironically, which is where we're at right now.
The Ritz, St. Louis.
I mean, think about it, like their whole mantra is surprise and delight, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, how do you show up in unexpected, uncommon ways? Whether it's somebody's favorite bourbon, coffee, chocolate, linens, the temperature, in the room, whatever it is. But yeah, Cameron is like known as like the CEO whisperer, and so when I met him at an event, I was like, I don't want him just to be a client. Like, it's cool to have somebody as a client. It's cool to have somebody as a contact. But like, when somebody's like in your corner, mentor, advisor, like close friend, like that's a whole nother level. And so yeah, I found out he loved Brooks Brothers. I found out what his sizes was, and I bought the entire fall collection. It was like $7,500 worth of clothes. And so when he checked into the hotel room, he didn't want to go to dinner. He didn't want to go to the ball game. Like, you tell, like he flew into Cleveland at the time. And it was like, dude, just give me, like, it was one of those travel days from hell. Like, he just wanted to go to bed. Like, get a shower, go to bed, and I go to dinner. When he came back down from that experience, he came down like 20 minutes later, he saw his hotel room. He's like, John, I've already texted 3 authors to change my most amazing customer experience story. I'm changing it to this. He said, whatever you want to talk about for as long as you want to talk about it, I'm all ears. So that relationship, though, here's the kicker. So $7,500 in clothes, probably another $20,000 over the course of a decade. And people are like, dude, why did you had him at hello? Like, why did you keep doing that? And it's like, when you show up for a relationship repetitively, when you want to, not because you need something or you have to, that's when it means the most. So Cameron has worked with over 300 CEOs of, call it 10 million to $1 billion companies. He's been the COO of 3 different companies that grew to 9 figures. Like, to get him in your corner is difficult, to get him to like actually advocate. But the reason I invested that was that, if I wanted to hire Cameron as a sales rep for a year, it cost me a couple $1 million and he'd still turn me down. He's all my 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 speaking gigs. He got double booked. There was no Giftology book. He'd say, go book John Ruhlin. And they'd be like, who the hell is John Ruhlin? And he'd be like, just trust me. So people are blindly booking me to speak on their biggest stages because Cameron became like a sales rep for Giftology before there was Giftology.
Yeah, Cameron, what's his last name?
Harold.
Yeah, Cameron Harold. He was on my podcast. What's the big company that he's known for?
1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Yeah, this is funny because when we were in Texas, this is all that the Roy Williams, the Wizard of Ads, he still works with Roy.
I'm sure he does, yeah.
And they're out of Canada.
Yeah, they're out of Vancouver. So they started a moving company. They started Wow One Day Painting.
Were they on, I was watching, what's that show we always watch?
Shark Tank.
Were they on Shark Tank?
I I don't know if they were on Shark Tank.
I think
but
they were on
Ellen.
Shark Tank,
They were on
too.
Ellen. They were on.
They pitched it on Shark Tank. I'm almost positive. That's funny because I know who these guys are. They were both on my podcast years ago.
Brian and Cameron both.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brian started. I mean, he was like, had the idea like a McDonald's drive-through. Like, I should start, picking up junk. And I mean, he's been offered, I think, $500 million, and he's turned it down. Like, he's growing out this whole like suite of brands. But Cameron was the guy who took him from $2 million to $127 million, no debt, no outside funding, in about 6 years. So he's a smart dude.
Yeah, so both those guys, but they have a franchise model.
They do.
And the difference is when you're looking at it, everybody says, so why don't you do a franchise? Why don't you do a franchise? Why don't you do a franchise? And I've thought long and hard. I mean, either you're gung-ho all in on franchises or you're not. And it's so hard because will I do a franchise one day? Yes. But you've got the Federal Trade Commission up your rear end. You just got a lot of stuff going on there. And what I've heard about franchises, and I'm kind of pivoting here a little bit more about business, but I want to go back to relationships. But ultimately,
no, this is important.
You get out of the business you love, which me, it's garage doors, and you start having to focus on people. And then these people come in, they pay $25,000, $50,000, $100,000. And then they say, I want you to do this for me. And you say, well, I need you to do a few things. In my opinion, this is almost how I want to run my business. I need you to go out there and meet the people. I need you to go out there, show up at the chambers and the BNI groups and smile and get involved in the hockey community. I know you like hockey. You get involved in the community because we can't do that from Phoenix. So I think that's important. And
it seems like a lot of franchisors, it's rare to not have there be an adversarial relationship between the franchisees and the franchisors.
You're right.
Because you have these guys that are paying a bunch of money plus a percentage of profit, and so they're like, why am I paying all of this? I'm running this business, but they don't understand the systems and processes that allowed them to have a business. So, but remember being at NASCAR and like the Subway franchise owners hated like the corporate headquarters. There's always, I think you've been able to control culture because like you guys are all the same team, and it's not like, hey, go off and do this. It's like, no, we're gonna buy and build and do this together. Versus I think not every franchise is this way, but I think there's a lot of them that there's a big disconnect. So I think you're smart. I mean, if you look at Chick-fil-A, one of the best run companies on the planet retail wise, they're not franchising. They're owner operator.
And these owners do not make a lot of money. And it's so hard. They've got the most requests out of anything to be able to make $100,000 a year. It's what they don't own the property.
They don't. Well, do you know what it costs to open up a Chick-fil-A?
It's fairly low, I believe.
Yeah, it's $5,000.
Yeah,
but there's 1,000 applicants for every one that they open.
Yeah, no.
You got guys that are lawyers and doctors and former college D1 coaches that are begging to be an owner operator. Now, I mean, I know some of the guys that are running them. Some of them, like, it used to be like, if you did a few $1 million as a Chick-fil-A, that was a big deal. Like, you got guys now that are doing $10, $15 million from one location, and they're not making $100,000. Now, they're not making $5 million either, but I think that they're in that mid six figures, call it $400,000 to $600,000, which for somebody that only had to put up $5,000.
It's great, but also I've heard, Alex Hormozy talks about it, and I've heard a lot of people talk about the franchise and how many people, I've read about it, and that's interesting. Speaking of Alex Hormozy, what I've realized is a lot of the best guys that become influencers, I'm talking Bradley, you can go on and on. They've structured a team. I'm going to bounce around a lot here because I want to talk to you about a lot of things. But Bradley, all these guys that are doing great, they've got researchers. Someone's going out and getting this information. I guarantee you Alex is not being like watching 1,000 TikToks a day. He's going on Instagram. People are researching fun, interesting things, whether it be this new AI tool.
Yeah,
it's great. And I'm doing the same things. I've got a whole team dedicated. I'm also getting a content manager. Now I've got 3 videographers. The third one getting hired should have been on this trip instead of this janky setup, but it works.
It works. Well, if you look at Vaynerchuk, I mean, he started with one dude, D-Rock.
Yep.
Full time. And then now, at least this was as of a couple years ago, D-Rock said, dude, the team was like 35 people just for Gary's personal brand. 35 people. So, I mean, the amount of content that he's cranking at that level, on top of running what now, like, I don't know, how many different Vayner companies are there? 7, 10? I mean, you can't do things without a team. Like, you're not going to be able to do it, at least not at a high level, and be able to operate a business on your own. So, but I mean, you got to start somewhere. Yeah, and he started with D-Rock. And D-Rock's still with him, which, you know, kudos to Gary for being able to keep a dude that long in that position.
It's amazing. I just feel like now I've got the right, you know, my whole mentally, since we partner with Cortec, my brain just goes, okay, now how do I go get the right people?
How did you select them, by the way? Because there's a lot of people that were clamoring.
Yeah, no, we had
to be a part of things. And I mean, what was the courting? I mean, we've talked loosely about it, but I don't think you ever said like, hey, we looked at all these companies. These guys were the right partner based upon this, and this.
So it's interesting because my good buddy Ken Goodrich owns Gettle. And he said, Tommy, he goes, these guys are kind of no BS. Can I introduce you to them before you start your process? And I said, sure. I said, Ken, any friend of yours is a friend of mine, and vice versa, you know, whatever. And he said, okay, so I met this guy, Doug, and Doug said, listen, if I like this business, I'm going to run at it. There's one thing about me you need to know. I will never lie or cheat. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'll do it. And we had Garage Door, you know, Freedom going, and we had the vertical track event.
That's the buyers group.
That's the buyers group, and it's a culmination of a lot of Garage Door guys. A lot of people come to this. We had 500-600 people last event, and he said, do you mind if I stop in for a day? And then he sat down with
Doug.
This is Doug from Cortec.
Oh, from Cortec.
And Doug sits down with all my top managers. And he goes, I'm blown away by your team. He goes, we only invest in the number one platform in an industry. He goes, you know, obviously, he goes, the air conditioning is a different model because there's like 50 platform companies. But he goes, we would never go into this industry unless you guys owned it. And, you know, we did the normal thing. You go out, we had 90 companies that looked, and out of the 90, I don't know how much I should say, but more than half of them came in and wanted the business and gave us an offer. And then you narrowed the list down to like 6 or 7, and all of them came in pretty aggressively. And then it was down to the management meetings. It was, who do we really like? And we use a company called Cowan, and Cowan just said, you're kind of married after this, so find somebody you can live with. Find somebody, like, ask them a lot of questions, go hard in the paint, ask them how much meetings they want, what the reporting looks like, how much, because some PE companies will come in and be like, we're changing everything. These guys are like, just keep doing what you're doing. Like,
true hands off.
What do you need help with? They come in every week, we get on a 45-minute call. What do you guys need help with? Once a month, it's 3 hours, and they say, you know, what they really are interested in, though, and this is something that's really important, is who are you buying and why? Because we're headed in for a recession. What's the plan? And I've got a lot of ideas, and they're like, they said, we don't like new construction. And I said, well, do you realize some of these new construction companies get 70 service calls a day, but they don't like to run service? And so I'm not necessarily buying the new construction, I'm buying the service side of it, and yes, the new construction comes with it. And
do you make any money on the new construction, or is that just like a break even at best?
There's money to be made there, but it's really fluctuated with the economy. It's the one thing, new construction travels with the economy. So 2009, everybody lost everything. Their company shut down. And that's the scary thing. New construction is always following builder trends, which is the economy. And really what I wanted to talk about briefly, because we talked about franchising, one of the things we talked about is a lot of these people want more than they're worth. And the way you structure a deal is with an earn-out, meaning they stay on 3 years.
This is the 30 or 40 companies that you're acquiring.
These are older companies, and a lot of times the owner says, listen, I want more than that. And you say, listen, we're going to turn on this, this, and this. Our problem we're having right now is we like things to be our way. And we don't really mold and gelled into what they did. We don't like to buy good businesses. We buy the businesses that could take our model, because imagine if you took, and this is one of my buddy's theories, Wrench Group. Like this is all he does, is he goes out and he buys good companies, leaves everything the same. And he just puts steroids on. He lowers the cost of buying stuff.
They come under the umbrella.
They come in the certain things. Like they got to report on financials and stuff. But my theory is, if I find a better company, let's learn from each other, and then let's make everything that way. And my cousin Ryan called me last night. We just bought his company in Colorado Springs, and he went off. I mean, he's like, I'm not coming. He's like, I'm treated. He just. And I said, what we promised Ryan, and he was not going to come to me till the cap fell off. I mean, it was like an eruption. And he goes, look, you guys got me. I'm used to owning a company. I'm used to having help. I'm used to working the own hours. And I'm working 12 hours, 14-hour days. No one's directed me. And I mean, I lost it. Not on him. I lost it on the other managers in the integration teams. And what I realized from this is, first of all, when you go through a transaction, it's the hardest 6 months of your life. I don't care how big you are. You know, it wasn't a huge company. It wasn't a tiny company. He deserved to have 2 weeks off. Didn't get that. And then he's used to not opening the store in the morning. He hasn't had to do that in a decade. And now to say, hey, you're a market manager. No, he's an earn-out owner. And we need to develop this. And the cool thing and
the language matters probably to him, how he's treated and what he's called or all that kind of stuff, right? I mean,
well, yeah.
Your identity is tied to.
You almost want to give them the freedom they've always had. You know what I told him, and what I made the mistake is I didn't relay this message to all my managers. Is I said, pick out your dream job. You're allowed to have as much PTO as you want as long as things are running right. It's going to be front loaded. So we got to hire another 10 technicians. We got to do this, and this. But what I've learned from this and this is what's great, is a lot of people look at me, they're like, man, everything just goes right for that guy. Trust me, it doesn't go right. It goes wrong big time. But then we make the differences. I will never make that mistake again. That's the difference. I call it a scar. It's another scar. You know, there's hypothetical, but for me, I'll never forget last night, ever. And I'll never make sure an owner ever feels that way again. I don't cousin or not. That has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So you know.
So on the acquisition side, so these guys are. I mean, you're working on the buyers group, though. A lot of guys are coming on board and leveraging the same technology and systems and processes before they ever get acquired. So they're better than their companies, right? Before they even
if somebody
become an acquisition target.
The fact is, if they come in, there's no company out there, like A1 or anybody, that's going to buy a company that's not on ServiceTitan for the same multiple. They're just not going to do it. You look at every company, you got to be on the right CRM, and ServiceTitan's the one. Number two, you got to be buying from the right, like your marketing. You got to look at your marketing. You got to look at the vehicles. Like if I'm buying a company, I'm like, are they driving new vehicles? And if they're not, what they tend to say is, listen, I don't want to spend the money, but then you understand they don't understand depreciation. They don't understand the customer aspect of what a new vehicle looks like. They're not charging the right prices. A lot of these guys say service agreements won't work in my industry, so you're looking at a 3-4 times multiple for a company that's not really sophisticated. Well, they could drive double, triple that if they really knew what they were doing. And I learned this the hard way, but 20 million is the magic number to get a really good multiple of EBITDA. 20 million of EBITDA.
And none of the guys are acquiring that anywhere close to that level, right?
All good?
I can't talk about this company, okay, but we're under the diligence period. And they're like, we're doing 7.5 million of EBITDA. And we were giving them smoking. We worked out an amazing deal. Well, then we got the diligence team, less than 4.
That's what they're really doing?
Yeah. Because most of these companies don't have good books. They don't even understand what EBITDA or profit really is. And
were they part of the vertical track?
They came to vertical track. They just started with Garage Door Freedom. And it's just interesting to me because, look, $4 million is a huge accomplishment. It's a lot of money to make as a profit. So it's just weird because
but it's cut in half.
Yeah,
That's
so
how are you working through the ego and the pride? And
it's impossible to do that, but you say this is the facts. They didn't really know where they were at. They knew that, and now, they seem to have this value stuck in their head of what the business is worth. But what a lot of businesses don't understand is, even if you get private equity, you're still taking a loan. You still have to have people say yes. And you will not get money. You know what they're giving us? They're giving us 4 to 5 times EBITDA. The rest of it's got to come out of our savings account or out of the fund, which dilutes the equity. So dilution is bad for everybody. It could be good. Here's another scenario. Let's say I found a 20 million EBITDA company. We said we're going to let you roll in 40%. Let's just say we gave them 8 times. So 160 million. And we said we're going to give you 40% of this to roll. Right? So 64 million goes in. We can look at the value of it then. Now, in hopes that we can help bring it up 10% a year for the next 4 years, but in hopes that the multiple is going to be way bigger as a team. Right. So that 40% might only become 3% of the new co. But that 3% will be worth triple what the 40% is. And I don't think if I had a whiteboard, I could show you how all this works, but as I get diluted with my shares, and I still own half. Let's say I walk out and I have 35%. That 35% is worth 4 times more than that other 50%, basically.
But are these guys that you're acquiring, are they excited about the second bite of the apple being even bigger than the first one?
They are. They are. And a lot of these guys know for a fact that
they have to trust you and that private equity company that you're actually going to be able to put everybody together and actually execute. So there's execution risk from their side, right?
There is execution. So when I look at if it's a big company, like 4 or 5 million of EBITDA, I say, keep doing what you're doing. Here's what we need to change. We need to change everything on how you guys, the payroll needs to match. The price book needs to match. The benefits need to match. Other than that, we'll help you with marketing. We'll train your guys. You run through our training center. We'll get you new trucks. We'll rebrand you your company. But you guys are a good company. I can't have a guy making completely different money and way different price books. So the goal is not to go in there and be like, we're going to change everything. It's just we're going to match the same benefits package. If for some reason they have a better benefits package, we'll buy out 6 months of that.
How often is that the case?
We've only seen one company 3 months before we bought them decided to get insurance for everybody and pay for the full thing. And I'm like, why didn't you do this the last 20 years you owned the business? Like, you decided to get insurance right as you're about to leave?
Was that their way of trying to take care of their employees?
Yeah, it's always easy to do it when you're selling, right?
Yeah.
But here's some interesting things. We were talking about the power of a good executive assistant. Yeah. And you said, what is it, Bonnie?
Yeah, when you're working with higher level affluent hedge funds or pro sports teams or, A-level actresses, really, the guys that are even hanging out at $100 million mastermind, you think about the caliber of people that are there, it's a different person than somebody that's an executive assistant of, just XYZ, person. And so Bonnie was an assistant for Olympia Dukakis, which is, she's a celebrity. She's been around for forever. And Bonnie was like, this is impossible. What do you do when somebody says, yeah, I need to charter a private jet and host this event for 75 people a week from now in Tahiti? Who do you even call that can pull off miracles like that? And I'm assuming you've asked Bree to do some crazy things. You asked your team and people around you, hey, let's just make this happen. So she was like, what if I put, what if I got together all of the top assistants of all of the top CEOs, Michael Bloomberg, you name the person. And she'd started, there's now over 250 celebrity assistants just in New York alone. And they're like a brother sisterhood. If they need help, pulling a favor, opening a door, getting tickets, hosting an event, anything's possible when you have the right relationships. And even on the executive assistant side, and so now she's spun out, she's written books. She goes and trains, Fortune 100 type executives and their assistants, how do you work well together? Because a lot of times, myself included, you might have an amazing assistant, but you don't even know sometimes how to leverage that person or how to empower them or what's even asked. And so understanding both sides of it, but she's one of the best, I think, in the world.
You just said earlier, Gary Vee has 35 people with his personal brand. I think when I'm looking at an executive assistant, I'm thinking, okay, I don't necessarily know if this person's going to handle all my travel because there's so much more to it. If you think about it, we're in St. Louis, you have somebody coming to me here. I mean, this person that I'm going to have for travel and content management is going to say, what's the biggest grocery company in St. Louis? You're going to spend an hour meeting that guy. What's something cool? That St. Louis, we're going to take the little elevator through the arch. Well, there's a lot to this. And with everything I got going on, I want a specialist. What I'm trying to figure out is, I don't want a person responsible for everything. Like, what I've noticed is I hate when I travel, I can't stand connection flights. That's why I'm going to start going private to a lot of stuff. There's another thing, we screwed up the other day and I wasn't pre-checked. And so I had to go through and take off my shoes and my belt. And
if you're tight for time, you could miss your
it's
flight.
super annoyed. So now I'm looking for ways to get more efficient, but I want a specialist. I want somebody that said, you gave me enough time to make sure this is perfect. I understand your schedule. Sometimes you want to go over, so I built in a buffer. It's so crazy because I'm not really like a micromanager. I'm not. I really don't ever want to do that. But even the way I get ready in the morning for the cleaning lady, we're getting a newer cleaning lady at the new house we're moving into. But I like my boxers not rolled up. I hate that. It's the little things. It's crazy. I like a piece of floss waiting out in the morning. There's all these little things. Like where the sad thing is she's not doing anything wrong. And the other sad part is I don't speak Spanish, so I can't even communicate. But I'm like, I just can't wait because I never knew how much I'd care about a person that helps with the house till I went through this the last 6 months. And I'm like, why isn't this in this fridge and that? Like, what happened to the shoes I wear every day? Why are those in an upstairs closet instead of on the shoe rack? And I know this stuff sounds stupid. It's like, dude, really, there's more important things in life. But
of course,
when it's all the time and you're searching for the jacket you wear every day and it's hidden somewhere, like these little things add up into a big deal. And I'm sure they do in all relationships. And I'm not even mad at her because I don't communicate. And it's my fault. But trust me, my life is about to
how are you going to find that person? Or how did you find that person?
Well, this person we found from church, but ultimately what we're going to do is find another person, and this goes through the Goldman Sachs person because they got to go through background checks and all this stuff now because, there's bigger risks now what we have. I mean, people get kidnapped, and I'm not worried about that. But so they literally, it was funny because the guy in my family office, he had a whole report, and this is Jeffrey Epstein. And forget everything with this sick MFer.
Yeah.
But it showed everything that his cleaning lady had to do. And it's 10 pages. And it said, when a guest comes, here's what you offer. I mean, it was down to like every single thing. When 2 people come over, when 8 people come over, here's how we handle this. Here's how this is done. Here's the room you stay in when company. But what I realized is it's just like a business. There's standard operating procedures. There's checklists for everything. There's the lighting in the house. There's the alarms, what you do when we're out of town. There's how I want my stuff set up in the morning. There's how to make the bed, what sheets I like, what sheets I don't like, what pillows I like on my side. Like, these things make your life more efficient and easy. And I never knew how much power this would give me until, like I hate getting my bag ready. Like, just, this is what I need every day when I travel. I just bought this bag that pulls up into, like, shelves.
Yeah.
And I'm like, these little things, though, you get used to it. And I just think it's going to make my life so much more efficient. Because look, I don't care what I eat. I really don't. Just give me something that's going to give me a 6-pack and make me live an extra 10 years. You know what I mean?
By the way, you need to, the guy who is Jake Paul and Mr. Beast and like some of the biggest influencers in the world's doctor is Joel Marion's doctor. He should be who you have.
Is that the 10, is that the Grant Cardone guy?
No. Actually, I mean, they're both in Miami, ironically enough.
What's that guy's name?
Gary Brecker is who you're talking about.
I saw him the other day.
Gary's awesome. Gary's like a biologist. He's not, I shouldn't say not really, he's not a doctor, but Gary's awesome. His company's 10X. But Dr. DeAndre is who, if you see, the stuff that Jake's done in a short amount of time, training-wise, like he's insane. He'd be the dude. If you're trying to figure out like how to dial in, live longer, catch things earlier, all that stuff, like he's the guy.
Well, so I hired this group called the Pinnacle. What is it called? Pinnacle Healthcare.
Yes.
Pinnacle Healthcare, and like.
Is that like with the Mayo Clinic or something?
No. This is next level. Like literally, it's a concierge service. And I talked to BMO. I talked to Goldman Sachs, and it's crazy. All the high up with family offices, like, are talking. These guys are multi-billionaires. They all use Pinnacle. And I talked to the doctor, and he goes, "Now you've got East versus West, right? As far as medicine."
Yeah.
He goes, I've got a hospital or a doctor I want you to go see in New York." And he goes, "There's something similar in California, but it's much different in a lot of ways." He goes, "They're going to look at your, bless you, he's going to look at your chromosomes. They're going to take a deep dive into hereditary. They're going to look at every single organ. And the difference about this New York company is they're dead on, and they'll tell you exactly what food to eat, when to eat it, what to do on weekends. But you also tell them, this is how I travel. This is what I enjoy. This is, I might have a cigar these days." And they'll tell you, "Listen, fair enough. We're going to work around you." But he's like, "This is the most accurate." Then he goes, and listen, I'm on the cutting edge. He goes, "I don't care if you want to do PRP or if you want stem cells." He goes, "I'll just tell you where to get them from." And he goes, "I'll tell you how to save a lot of money at the same time." He goes, "Because I don't care. We're into longevity. We're into making you live a long time." And I'm like, "Look, should I be doing this? Is testosterone therapy okay?" Like, he's like, "Look, you're going to have all these questions." And he goes, "We don't have an answer," because he goes, quite frankly, he goes, "It's hard to get 10,000 people over 50 years to do a case study." He goes, "But we know what we know is damaging. If you're going to take, we talked about some stuff, NAD.
Yeah, NAD.
So the NAD stuff, like.
The different drips and IVs and
he's
peptides and all that.
So I'm trying, look, you've got all these nutritions. I mean, listen, you've got all these healthy supplements. It's crazy. And so part of this personal assistant I want to get doesn't only handle all travel, but they handle all my workouts, and they handle all my dieting, and they handle when I go get an IV, and does the IV come to me? Because the president of our company said one thing that stood out. He goes, "Tommy, there's two things in life that I want you to think long and hard about this that you can never get. And that's time and health. You can't go buy 10 hours, and you can't buy health when it's deteriorating." So he goes, "I want you to be set up at a whole new level for your time management and your health."
Yeah.
And that's really what this year's all about.
Well, dude, I would just say get a second opinion on whatever Pinnacle. I'm not familiar with Pinnacle. I know Gary. I know.
No, they'll recommend you. What it is like if my mom has something going on,
yep.
You call this. It's basically like a doctor on call.
Yeah, like a concierge.
It's a concierge, so it's not even expensive unless. It really wasn't.
You really leverage. Are you guys doing you're doing like DNA scans and all that kind of stuff to be able to like look.
Well, I'll get a hold of DeAndre and I'll let him know. Yeah, they're doing DNA. They're doing chromosomes. Like they want to find out what you're susceptible from.
So, I talked to DeAndre yesterday. He's like, "I want to do a gift for somebody that's important to me." Like Drake is one of his clients. Like it's like, but it's. What I think is cool is like guys like Mr. Beast who doing really, really well. He's putting his entire C-suite on a program with him because he's like, "I want my entire team to feel as good as I feel and to be as sharp and accurate and whatever else." It's like one of the first times where an entire company's like the entire C-suite is getting access to the peptides and to the IVs and whatever else, which to me reminds me of something that you would do, saying, "Hey, I want Jim and all the guys that are leading this company to be, it's not just you, like your team needs to be at that level too."
It's interesting, and I talked about this a lot on stage recently in Tulum. I'm like, what happened when the people started going with around some of the influencers and authors. You know what happened when I started inviting them on these trips? Is all of a sudden they broke through walls mentally. They were thirsty for knowledge. They wanted more. And now they're like, can I go on this trip to go visit this company? And they're in their own little mastermind groups with other COOs or CTOs, whatever it might be. And I'm like, and then here's what I realized is I used to get in the way. I used to go, no, I've been through this. Instead of letting them make their own mistakes, which is very detrimental in the short term, but amazing how much someone could grow in the long term. And now I'm like, listen, if you don't mind confiding in me and asking me a few things, but I'm not going to I'm not, like I told you earlier, I'm not going to micromanage you. But at least let me, like I looked at a lot of things and I'm like, these guys don't want to bother me on a lot of stuff. And I'm like, guys, I've been doing this 16 years. When we're looking at this company, I'll give you another example. They got 300 contracts with builders. And they're like, we're going to get rid of new construction. I'm like, we're not letting go of 80 installers. I'm like, I'm sorry. What we're going to do, and I explained the whole process, and they're like, I'm like, I understand that Dan calls me entrepreneurial. And he almost sounds like it's a disease. He's like, oh, well, he's very entrepreneurial. And it's like, just realize this work environment is very entrepreneurial. And I always say, well, I'll take entrepreneurial if it takes 10 weeks to make a decision, if that's what's corporate. Like, I make decisions and I sprint. And I want to know what the opposite, what's an antonym of
entrepreneurial?
Yeah, what would that be?
Bureaucracy?
Bureaucratic. I just...
Decision by committees?
Yeah. And I confide in a lot of other people, but I got some more. Well, let's dive into some more stuff because I love this stuff. Giftology is all about really. You explained it to me pretty well. You said, listen, it's to deepen relationships, but ultimately as well, you're like, if you got somebody that you think you could help and they could help you, and it's a mutually beneficial relationship, you got to remember that they've got 3 or 4 gatekeepers around them. Like I've got Bree, I've got Jim, I've got all these people.
And yeah, to break through to somebody like you, or to break through to your owners, or to the people that are hosting events. I mean, your suppliers. Like the average person or executive is getting hit with 30,000 messages a day. 30,000. So people are like, man, why don't I get a text back? Why don't I get a phone call back? Why am I not getting referrals from that person? Like, we have a good product, we have a good service. Why am I not getting more deals? Well, dude, you have to be trusted, and the key is top of mind. Like, but not top of mind like cheese ball, like top of mind like, man, I love that guy, I love that gal, I love that company. How does that happen? Well, it doesn't happen, with banners on websites and whatever else. It happens because there's a one-to-one connection. And really what Giftology does is helps people, like you're getting FaceTime right now with me, which means the other 9,999 people that want to get FaceTime with you, your FaceTime doesn't scale. But with what we're talking about, I hit you with a crazy $5,000, $10,000 knife set.
Yep.
Was I in Phoenix when I did it? No, I did it from afar. Were you the only one that received something like that? No. I mean, my gifting budget's $750,000 this year. So I'm able to hit and help my clients scale their time and their influence and their impact from afar. Not that there's, like, we're gonna have cigars in a couple hours. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be fun, but you're gonna be on to the next city, grabbing the next dinner, going to the next hotel, going to the next event. But when you go home, what's staring you in the face every time you go into your kitchen?
The knife set.
And for Bree, what's what's she drinking her coffee from? The $2,000 mug. Like,
which we got to take that out of the. We got to take that out of the case.
You got it probably in a display case, right?
I still kept it in the display case,
dude. That's cool.
But I will tell you this: it's one of the first things people go, "What's in the case?" It's almost like
story. That's the key. Is think about there's a handful of people when you go to hang out with Ken Goodrich or whatever. You're telling stories of people who you've hung out with, things that you've done, and we all have our go-to story. What Giftology has allowed us to do is to help people create stories that are replicatable. Like the knife set that you got is the same knife set that Tony Robbins got. It's the same knife set that Dean Graziosi got. Same knife set that Ed Milet got.
Yep.
Same delivery mechanism, but each of them are thinking about whoever gave them the set. Pete Vargas is the person who gave Tony Robbins the set. So we've built systems and mechanisms on how to stay top of mind, how to make somebody feel a certain way. And at the end of the day, like, we all want those extra, we want stories to be told about us when we're not at the Ritz, when we're not at the mastermind, when we're not at the conference. That does not happen for most people unless they're there and present. So they're not scaling their ability to have stories being told about them all over the country. And for somebody like you, like having, the people that you've acquired businesses from, somebody's going to go and say, hey, did Tommy treat you right? What story are they going to tell? Your suppliers that you're buying stuff from, what stories are those people going to tell when you're not around? We all want people to speak well of us, but most people don't have an intentional way to say, hey, I see you, you matter, I care about you, I'm in your corner. It might feel that way, but they don't have a mechanism and that's really at a core level what we're teaching people, and then also providing. You want to send 10,000 people something and make them cry? Most people can't send one person something and make them cry.
Well, that's one of the things that you're here today is I'm going to not only set a budget, but we're going to set a cadence. And part of my personal says different than the executive, is working on Giftology. But also, listen, there's one main goal I have that I haven't been doing a great job of. And that's just a simple video message. Every single day, 30 of them that takes me less than 15 minutes. It's showing up to the mojo calls. But I'm telling you right now, when life gets chaotic, what you need to do is step back and figure out a way to get it. Who do I need to hire? What do I need to do to get it back into a cadence? And that's my biggest thing, is being there for my people in a new way, better way. You said there's a training program for customer service. You said Disney has one. And then you said just now we're talking about Cameron's COO Alliance.
So every mastermind, every group, every Vistage, EO, YPO, Tiger, who are they attracting? Founders and CEOs.
Yep.
Name a group. If every business rises and falls based upon their, not just the vision, but the execution of the vision, the implementation. Cameron's the only guy I know that coaches CEOs, but his real skill set is how do you take the number two and put them together with other world-class, 10 million to $1 billion company COOs so that they can learn from each other.
So the COO Alliance is for the number two.
There's no CEOs allowed ever. So
I don't want to go. Well, that's good.
No, but think about it. Like if we're both visionaries. Like we're both the guys that big picture, big dreams.
You need integrators.
But
you need this number twos.
But we drive integrators crazy because how many visions, how many ideas, how fast do we want to go? So Cameron speaks the language of the CEO because he's worked with CEOs. He still coaches. I think he got brought over by the Sheikh of Qatar, and there's 300 companies that he owns, like crazy stuff. But his real skill set. And so anybody I talk to that's like mid-market company, doing anywhere from tens of millions or hundreds of millions or billions, the COO Alliance, I think they're up to a few hundred COOs globally. But yeah, dude, for you, somebody like you probably has more than one COO. Like a lot of his events are in your backyard.
What's interesting is the gal, so Amanda Tress yesterday, we met her number two. Her name is Lindsay. And she said, you want to know the person you want to go after? The number two to the number two. She goes, at every company you find the number two to the number two, and that is the victory. And nobody knows, no one really understands that, right?
Yeah.
Who's the number two to the number two? Who's the number two to the integrator?
Because that's that person. It's
the person that
right-hand person.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
And they're probably doing a lot of the work, the grunt work. They're probably underappreciated. They're not being paid nearly as much as the COO.
And they got the playbook. They know exactly what goes on, and they know how to assist in doing that. They understand what needs to be done, the 9 to 5. They do the grunt work, like you said.
And you can probably recruit them away for a lot less money. And
isn't that crazy?
The roles responsible. It's smart. It's like one of the things that we do is number one employee that we hire are college educated stay-at-home moms when the kids go back to school.
Right.
We get incredible talent. Not necessarily, we don't have to pay top tier. Like they care about flexibility. They care about like taking care of their kids. They care about like being able to work from home. So like finding those little niches of key talent.
How do you find that those stay at home that
They all know each other.
I mean, but what is the thing that lures them in? Flexibility.
They find out that we offer house cleaning for every employee every other week. It's part of Giftology. It's the most bragged about. Like we offer unlimited babysitter on date nights. We do things that, nobody's bragging about 401k or stuff that costs a company a crap ton of money, but they will brag about having a house cleaner. Like one of our employees, both of her parents are doctors, and when they get together, guess what they talk about? The doctors tell their friends, my daughter works for Giftology. She has her own house cleaner paid for by the company.
Yeah, no, I remember this story. How many employees does Giftology have?
Most of our staff is employed by our suppliers. So Cutco gives us dedicated staff, but they're not on our payroll. So we have 12 people, but we have hundreds of people at our suppliers. They're just not on our payroll.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. And that's really, really smart. Like one of the things that I'm working on is called a PEO.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
So I don't pay. Another company holds the burden, but they make a fee each month. And as the company
they
grows,
manage the benefits, they manage
everything.
All the hassle, yeah.
So that's something we're looking at to get the ball rolling and all these other things I'm focused on. If I had to tell people what people that give back, the number one thing I always tell people, it's not about cold plunging or waking up at 4 a.m. And it's not necessarily about time with family, although time with family is the most important thing anybody should be. If you don't have money, you don't get time with family, so money is a release to do that. But relationships, it's connectors. It's people that can make a phone call and get connected. That's the number one trait.
Yeah, absolutely. It's every business is a people business, and when you can do that, good things happen.
I want you to close this out. Any final thoughts? We talked about a lot of stuff, and this is what I love. This stuff, I've got 4 pages of notes. The people listening, if you don't have notes, if you're not going to think about doing something, that's the problem. And if you do have notes and they go somewhere in a closet to die, that's a bigger problem. But go ahead and close this out.
I would just say that a lot, you talk about cold plunges and whatever else. A lot of people have like a gratitude journal. Hey, I feel gratitude. Gratitude isn't a feeling; it's an action. So if there's relationships that have helped you build a business, get you a job, past professors, teachers, coaches, go take once a day and show gratitude and do gratitude to the people that have you get where you're going, and the people that are going to get you to the next level. Go do it. Don't talk about it. Don't just feel it. Take action.
I love it. John, thanks for inviting me out here. Good times.
Absolutely.